Hey guys, welcome back. So, one thing we're going to kind of start circling around. You see the guys, of course. Say hi, you guys.
Yes,
Hi.
sir. We here.
What's up, guys?
So, one thing we're going to kind of jump right into is the thing I've been kind of talking about all week. GLPs. Can we get
G-
a round of applause?
Let's go, GLPs.
Oh,
Woo!
Woo! Yeah,
All
there's
right.
not a lot of people that are going to want to hear this, but hear us out. Hear us out. All right. So I'm not going to start it off. I'm going to let somebody that's actually used it start off. So, Isaac.
yeah. So I've taken a GLP-3 specifically since February. It's currently December. I've been off of it for about 3 to 4 months, but I primarily started it to really keep control of my binge eating, and then in the process, I ended up losing about I think it was around 25, 30 pounds. Got the leanest I've ever gotten, and I mean it's totally changed my life. I was able to get a control of my food noise, my binge eating. I don't always think about food anymore. The food noise is practically gone. I mean, it's total life changer. I feel like a brand new person.
Okay, and when it comes to that, did you feel before hopping on? How did you feel mentally?
If I had to put on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a two. Every waking moment, it was food. As soon as I wake up, what am I going to eat? And then while I'm eating, what am I going to eat next? Food just like totally ruled my life. Whether I was tracking calories, not tracking calories, whatever it was, I was binging multiple times a week. And yes, and as soon as I took it, it was about a week into it. I remember waking up and just feeling this like euphoric feeling, not thinking about food. I didn't eat until maybe 12 p.m. and I woke up, 4 or 5 hours earlier. It was crazy. I've never done that my entire life.
As someone who's never been on GLP-1 or any peptides at all, it's so interesting to hear that. So the one thing I could relate to that is like, for example, last night I had a really strong urge to binge at my Christmas party last night, but I didn't, and then I woke up and had this euphoric feeling because I didn't. Would you say it's kind of like that feeling of damn, I won, I beat that battle.
But yeah, super similar feeling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dude. So I have so many questions because again, I've never been on it and I've struggled with food addiction. Um, so another question I have is, can we get a little bit more specific into like the feeling of the hunger? So from a scientific point of view, what a GLP-1 does, and correct me if I'm wrong or you can add to this, but a GLP-1 basically slows gastric emptying. So when you eat food, it slows down the digestion of that food. And then it also basically burns more calories to digest that food. Is that correct, or is there more to that?
Right. I think with the GLP-3, there's a little bit more because it acts on, the three different receptors.
Okay.
I don't honestly, I'm not as educated as some other people are on what they all three do. So I know that there are one
I
of the
know there's
receptors that go
I
ahead.
know there's appetite suppressant. Then there's secondly, it helps with like some kind of like burning of like some kind of burning of fat compared to like a trizepatide or sigmaglutide because those work on GLP-1s and they're mostly just for hunger suppression.
Right, yeah, and I think the big difference with GLP-3 is the third receptor that it acts on, the glucagon receptor, which to my understanding is what really helps you be more mindful of what you're eating. So in my experience, what I've heard at least is that people who are on a GLP-1 or GLP-2, which is Ozempic and tirzepatide, their hunger is suppressed, and that's the main, obviously that's the main reason that they lose weight. So I didn't necessarily feel a huge hunger suppression. It was more or less I was able to be much more conscious while I'm eating, right? That mindfulness, I was much more present while I'm eating my food, and the decision to binge was you didn't get that out of control feeling that you often get kind of before, during, and after a binge. I felt much more aware. There's definitely some appetite suppression, but because there's three different receptors that it's acting on, it's a little bit more evenly dispersed. So I'm still able to eat the same amount of food, but the food that I'm eating, I'm able to be very much more deliberate about what I'm eating, and like the craving aspect of it, I'm able to be much more rational about cravings.
So okay, so it's my knowledge that I guess I am very uninformed on this, but I thought that all GLP-1s kind of act in the same way, where they reduce gastric emptying, they slow down digestion, which basically slow down the release of ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and it all worked like that. But I guess there's way more to it. But what I was gonna say or ask is, so do you think there's a psychological aspect to the peptides, or do you think it's mainly physical?
I think the physical leads to the psychological. I think that'll vary a lot depending on the person. Psychological benefit from it, but as someone who thought about food for 19 years of my life and was, consumed.
I got a question to add on top of that. So he's talking about the psychological aspect. Okay, what about the pressure before taking, like that psychological aspect, like hearing about everything about people like saying, "Oh, GLP-1s are cheating," or like things like that. Like, how did you feel before jumping on it?
Hang on, I'm sorry. Can we pause for a second? It said Isaac's recording stopped. I I'll cut this part out.
It's going good though. It's going good.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully I remember to cut this part out. Maybe I won't. Who cares?
Oh, we'll see. He's switching all the way over there.
Yeah. Okay. I think let's go
Okay.
back to the question of do you think it's psychological or do you think it's purely physical what these GLP-1s do to you?
So I think that it varies on the person. I think that for some people it is going to be mainly physical, right? If you're a bodybuilder who doesn't really struggle with food noise and binge eating, you just want your cut to be a little bit easier, you're probably just going to reap the physical benefits of it, burning fat faster, being able to be more conscious about what you're eating. But for me, on the other hand, as someone who struggled with food for almost 20 years, the psychological benefits like massively outweighed the physical benefits. My day-to-day life looks entirely different now solely because I'm able to not think about food.
The last question I had on this specific topic is do you think I'm just trying to get a grasp on this. Do you think do you think there's a placebo effect going on here where like let's say I take a GLP-1 tonight, I wake up tomorrow, I know I'm on a GLP-1, so maybe I'm more disciplined. I'm more likely to say no to the food because I know that I'm on the GLP-1.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
think?
100%. Because kind of around that time, I had that euphoric feeling. It was, I mean, a week into it was, which I don't think that it actually fully takes effect until week number 3 or 4. Um, so yeah, there's definitely a huge placebo aspect to it. I felt like, not only are you putting, a monetary commitment into it, but when you're injecting something in yourself, it's pretty serious. So that, that placebo effect is very strong. You really think that you've taken it a bit more seriously, and it's much easier for it was much easier for me at least to kind of have that placebo effect.
Yeah, that's so interesting actually to think about.
Yeah, because I've heard about when it comes to, because like for instance, Jake Harness is the one that, or Jake Harness on here, he's the one that told me about it, and he said like when it came to it, he did feel it instantly, but it also depends on the dosage that you're doing it. There is different dosages. Like for instance, there's people that are going to be microdosing, and then there's people that are going to go completely balls to the walls, like 2 milligrams, and like depending on what you take, it's that's how prone the side effects are going to be. Because there is side effects. That's the thing about any kind of injectable, any kind of peptides, like anabolics. Like there is side effects to all of them, but there's ways to mitigate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good topic to jump into. So Isaac, did you actually experience any negative side effects when you were on it?
Yeah, so thankfully I did my research. I talked a lot with if you guys know Dawson Weiss, he runs Apex Research. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had D-Trend.
Detread.
Yeah, yeah. So I heard about it from an old bodybuilding coach that I had, but I didn't realize how affordable GLPs could be until I had reached out to him. And so then and I watched a lot of his stuff on how to properly titrate up and down. So luckily, I started out on a really small dose, and took weeks upon weeks to settle into that dose, and before I would start upping it. So I had little to no nausea, no stomach pain. So I had a great experience. However, my parents, I got both of them on GLP-3 as well, and they were not as smart about it. They did not take my advice. So, they tried to titrate up pretty quickly, and they started to see some stomach problems, just a lot of like some bloatedness, stomach pain, nausea. But, I think when you do it the right way, there's a big barrier to entry. You can kind of see, okay, am I going to feel bad on this? Maybe I should stop, or maybe I shouldn't.
Mm, yeah. Carlos, do you know of any other potential side effects that can come with it?
When it comes to the thing with GLPs, so the thing that hurts people with GLP-1s is that it is an appetite suppressant. It's like mainly an appetite suppressant, and what happens is people do not know the foundation to like their fitness or their routines and stuff. And so I've seen cases where people will take trizepatide, sigmaglutide, and stuff like that, and lose significant amount of size, and it's just because they're not eating. That's kind of one of the biggest side effects is dehydration when it comes to these GLPs, because like the thing is like it stops you from thinking about anything. And so like I've seen people like go from being pretty muscly to now they're just skinny. And so that's one of the biggest side effects. Retatrutide kind of is like it helps you keep the muscle mass more a little bit more, but at the end of the day, if your whole thing is like you want to lose weight but build muscle at the same time, you have to build yourself that routine. And sometimes I bet Isaac can talk about it, but there's gonna be times where you're gonna have to force feed yourself. Like especially if you want to build muscle, there's gonna be times where you're gonna have to force feed yourself.
Yeah, you have to be very specific about what you eat and when you eat and how you go about eating in general. Yeah, I think my parents experienced a very similar thing to what you're talking about. They just kind of got skinny. They weren't lifting as much. I did the whole round. I gave them a full plan. Eat this whenever you do this, and they didn't really listen to it. Um, so they reap some of those benefits. But yeah, even myself, I wasn't as into bodybuilding when I started. Or I've been into bodybuilding for a long time, and once I actually got on a GLP, I had started doing like some rock climbing, just kind of more untraditional strength things. So I noticed
Yeah.
like the size of my legs had like gone down tremendously because I wasn't training them as often as I should have been. So I'm on
Yeah.
the blue back up now.
Yeah, so as well, Carlos has never taken it so far, but as someone who's not planning on taking it in the future and has never taken it, I'm obviously taking a little bit of a backseat in this conversation, but what I do know is muscle physiology and fat loss physiology. So I wanted to talk about how to mitigate some of these side effects that we just talked about, especially the muscle loss aspect. I've had so many personal training consultations come to me because they took GLP-1s and had a bad experience with it. And I'm not saying that that'll happen with everyone, but these specific people, 9 times out of 10, they didn't train, they didn't change their eating habits, they didn't exercise more, they just took it and hoped that, it would change their life. So, before I kind of jump into the boring physiology, Isaac, what are some methods that you use, or after you've started to learn more about nutrition and physiology, to mitigate some of that muscle loss?
As far as the nutrition side of things, for me, the easiest thing to do was to just have one staple meal every single day that got me. It was 100 grams of protein. I was a little bit lucky. I worked at a pizzeria, so we had these like oven baked chicken wings that were really good, 1,000 calories, 100 grams of protein. It was really easy for me to get that down, and so that pretty much set me up every single day to eat one more meal and then hit my protein goal. So, I mean, because protein is obviously going to be one of your most important, if not your most important, macronutrient when you're on a GOP. And as for the lifting side of things, I think you have to be so careful about, like you can't skip leg day. I mean, you can't be you can't be one of those guys anymore. You have to be very careful about what you're skipping, sticking to a routine.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, from a physiology aspect, what happens is like most people don't lose muscle because they're not eating enough on a GLP-1. They lose muscle because they're not actually giving their muscles a stimulus and they're not eating enough, right? Those two things combined is obviously terrible. Because one, if you're not eating enough protein, your body will burn through your own protein to get what it needs. And number two, if you're not giving your muscles that stimulus, then they are obviously not going to grow. And if you're doing both of those things at once, then they're going to atrophy or shrink. So, as someone who's never been on, GLP-1, but really understands muscle physiology, here are a couple things that you guys can do if you're listening and thinking about getting on it. By the way, this is not medical advice. All right, we're just a bunch of like dumbasses just talking. Um, Number one, train. Train each muscle twice a week at least. I like doing 3 times a week, but I'm a little more advanced. I'm more into that bodybuilding aspect of it. So train a muscle at least twice a week. If you're gonna train it once a week, train at least 4 to 5 sets per muscle group. If you're gonna train a muscle at least twice a week, then all you really need is 1 or 2 sets. All right, minimum. Number two, make sure you get around zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.9 grams of protein per body weight. I know that everyone likes to say 1 gram per pound. It can be redundant for certain individuals. For most individuals, you actually don't really need a gram per pound. I'd rather you get a little bit extra carbs because one, they're tastier, and two, they give you more energy to give you that muscle growth stimulus in the gym. All right, and number three, the thing that a lot of people actually miss is under eating on their carbs and fats. All right, so I want to ask you, when you were on the GLP and training, what take me through like a full day of eating for you on an average day, without really like you said you weren't tracking. Were you tracking your calories or?
No, no, I wasn't tracking my calories.
Okay, so you
I had been tracking prior to it, so I wouldn't recommend that for most people, but I've been tracking for about 4 years. So there really wasn't anything in my diet that I didn't have a loose idea of, what I was eating. So
all right, so you were kind of intuitively eating, if you will. So take us through like a full day of eating that you kind of did while you're on a GLP.
yeah, so it was really easy for me to skip breakfast. So I would usually do my workouts in the morning. Fasted. When I was doing rock climbing, I would do it fasted. I might have some caffeine in the morning, I might not. And then after rock climbing, I would go and eat my first meal. It was usually something a little bit smaller, but I tried to get a pretty even amount of carbs and protein. One thing I will say is I did not focus on fats nearly as much as I should have. I did not understand how important they were. I mean, a typical meal would be usually around 8 ounces of some sort of lean protein, chicken, ground beef, and then I would just have some sort of carb with it. Rice. I would usually use rice because I could eat a little bit more of that and get more calories in. And then on training days, I would just kind of switch that structure around a little bit. I would eat the proteins and carbs before my workout, with some caffeine, then go work out, come back and have a protein shake to replenish that. And then that's usually at the end of the night when I would get home from work is when I would have that staple. Like it was almost a one meal a day type of situation, which is like I guess that first meal is more of like a snack in a way. Um, so yeah, and then I would come home and have that staple meal with 100 plus grams of protein, just a really big meal, fill me up before I go to bed, and that's what, at least in my opinion, that's what helped me stay full for hours throughout the next morning. Yeah, if I was lifting, I wouldn't work out fasted. But if I was doing like rock climbing or maybe just like going on a run or just cardio in the morning, I would do it fasted.
Okay, that's fair. I was gonna jump in and just say, if you guys are lifting, I would prefer you not work out fasted. Not you, I'm just saying in general.
Yeah,
We're always gonna perform better, especially like when we're training super intensely, like resistance training, if we have some carbs in our system. I know a lot. There's a big trend of like working out fasted. I want you guys to try. If you work out fasted, I want you to try one day, slam 75 grams of carbs 30 minutes before you work out and tell me you don't have a better workout. And nine times out of nine, right, you're going to say that you will have a better workout because this is just like there's literature, it's physiology, it's just like I don't understand this premise of which I actually do understand because I used to fall into that category. I used to work out fast all the time because I felt like I had to earn the food. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But
yeah.
we're smarter than that now. So, Carlos, why don't you tell us kind of about your strategy going into, or did you mention that you were gonna?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We'll do it a little. Okay, for everybody here, everybody that's watching, yeah, boy, I'm hopping on GLPs in January. This is my announcement. Clip it, chat. We're gonna need this for the post. But this is my decision why I had to do it. So we're gonna talk about natural, unnatural. I hate the terms. I just think it's toxic. But for the premise of this video, I lost 155 pounds naturally first and competed in a bodybuilding show. That destroyed my relationship with food. And the reason why is because think about having to do a prep, but for almost 3 years. That's what I was doing. I pretty much ran a prep for almost 3 years to get to 155 or to get down to 195. And what happened after was I didn't know how to recover to getting into real food to just normal food. And so what has been happening since then has been a struggle of just on and off, on off. I have more responsibilities now. I do coaching. I have a better job now. There's just a lot going in my life that luckily I have been put into place that I'm able to hop on peptides. Back then, when I lost it naturally, I didn't have any money. I could barely buy meat back then. But now I'm in a better position where I can pay for this stuff, and this is the reason why I'm gonna hop on Retatrutide. The reason why I'm hopping on TRT is because my health is affected by this. Like I have low testosterone because of my parents. And so it has been a decision that it's not been easy just because like of the whole thing of online, like everyone's like, oh, like if you do it naturally you're better and things like that. Like it has been a hard decision, but at the end of the day, no one's going to do it for me. No one's going to pull that trigger. Like no one's going to help me lose weight. It's just going to be me. So that's the reason why I'm hopping on it. And so what I am doing is that's the thing is I set the foundation. I know what I'm doing. I know how to eat throughout the day. I know how much protein I'm supposed to be eating. I know how many calories I'm supposed to be eating. Where I fail is once that is completed, telling myself to stop. That's where when my emotions get to play, I know exactly what to eat throughout the day, how much protein I'm supposed to do. I do it, but then it's that time where I leave myself alone with my emotions. And so my therapist and my physician or whatever, my doctor, we agreed that this is something that we should do. So, for instance, I weigh 238. My lowest weight was 195. If anybody's gone through anything like that and gained a little bit of weight, you know how much of a mental toll that takes, especially when you get to that point. So, come January, I'm going to be hopping on those peptides and I guess anabolic, and then I'm going to be cutting down to about 210 pounds, to 210, 200 by March, so I can go ahead and throughout the maintain that until August, and then August start another bulk, and then start it again in January.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, there's a big stigma around people using peptides, around people using TRT. I just wanted to say, like, I'm planning on being a lifelong natural, but my testosterone levels are fine. So for anyone watching this video thinking that Carlos is like, or Carlos or people like Carlos are cheating or this and that, if it's for the betterment of his health, is it cheating? Like what do you mean by cheating? Not everyone's gonna be a professional bodybuilder. Like dude's just trying to be healthier and live a better quality of life. Right? And this is coming from someone who probably will never ever do TRT or steroids or peptides. I mean, peptides maybe after I get my pro card, but I got to get that natty pro card first. By the way, if you're listening and you're into natural bodybuilding, you can't take peptides. Um, before or, for your show. So that's why I'm haven't tried it yet. But yeah,
And that's one thing I told myself. I was like, I'm doing it because in reality, like even though I train like a bodybuilder, I do everything like a body. I would never be a professional bodybuilder. There's just too much going on with my. I have loose skin. I got to get it removed to be able to be competitive. And so, like that's the whole also thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see how much I can take it without having to have loose skin surgery. Would I rather spend 2 to 3 grand on peptides, or would I rather spend 20 grand to go get sliced up?
yep. Just gotta hammer those ab crunches, bro. Get strong as hell on ab crunches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So yeah, like I said, like there's such a big stigma, and like so, Isaac, I want to ask you since you've actually done it. What did people look at you differently when you told people you were on a peptide, or did you kind of keep that to yourself in fear of people looking at you differently?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. A lot of people didn't say anything because they had no idea. The longer I was on it, the more I realized like what it was. It felt like cheating to me at first. I thought that it was a cope, but in my head I was like, I don't want to think about food anymore. So it was worth it to me. The cope was worth it. Now looking back, I don't see it that way. I think when you start using, especially when you throw around the term natural versus unnatural, I mean, is ibuprofen natural? I mean, there's so many there's no clear line in the sand.
Mm,
So kind of like you said earlier, I think that if it's going to be for the betterment of your health and you're going into it with the right foundation and the right mindset, then I think that you should have the free will to do pretty much whatever you want. But yeah, so as for me, yeah, I was really scared to tell people up until kind of around the beginning of this year, especially when I started posting content. I was like, 'cause if it weren't for the people who were being honest about it and making it more well known, then I would have never found out about it.
mm,
And I remember how hopeless I felt back then. And so that's why I think it's super important to talk about it. If you are on it or thinking about getting on it, talk to anybody. Tell everybody about it. I mean, if anyone looks at you differently, You know, they either don't know what they're talking about or they don't need to be in your life. It's kind of how
Hmm.
I see it now.
I gotta add something to add to that. First off, if you get on it and someone says anything about you, tell them to get their money up because that's probably why the only reason they're not getting on it. Second off, um, do you say if you're say in this situation, say your mental health is poor and you don't talk about it and everything, and you know how we talk about how people say like, "Oh, be a man, don't talk about your feelings," but if then you go see a therapist, does that make you weak because you got help? No, it doesn't make you weak. So it's the same thing with peptides. It's like, yeah, you've tried it so many times, it's not worked for you. Just because you hop on something to help you doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make it any different. What I tell people on my lives all the time is like, if you did it naturally and I did it and somebody else did it unnaturally, at the end of the day, we can coexist and say, hey, we lost weight and we're happy.
Yep.
That's all we gotta say. Is like we can coexist and be happy as long as you're bettering your health. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's literally people out there who take steroids just because they want to be bigger. Like, and then we have people like you guys who are spreading awareness and actually making an impact on other people's lives. Like Isaac, I don't think you haven't been posting content for too long, right?
No, no, since my personal page, October.
Right. So someone might say you're cheating, but from my eyes, it's like, dude, first of all, you haven't even been on them for a few months, you said, right?
Right, yeah, since October.
Okay, so you've been off for a few months and you're still able to keep those habits because you took action on changing your lifestyle while you're on it as help. And two, you're actually giving people fantastic advice online, whether or not it's about GLP-1s. Like you tell people, if you binge last night, no, you didn't. Not to say like, and I want you to talk about this because a lot of people think that when you say that, you're just saying like, oh, it's fine, just do it again. You don't have to change anything. I want you to touch on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a super common misconception people get when they hear me say that. But all I mean by that is that, no matter what you did last night, it should not impact your current day. That's how you stay in one of those binge cycles. If you binge last night and you're going to restrict yourself today even more, you're going to do extra punishment cardio. That's just going to reinforce that bad habit. So if you plan on getting 10,000 steps and getting in an hour lift today, just continue to do that. You also don't need to binge because you messed up. That's why I think it's very important to leave it in the past. Totally forget about it, if you will.
Yeah, do you ever get sick of saying the same thing every day?
No, I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes I even need that reminder. Like, shit. No,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
didn't.
I do it for myself. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why that's why the idea came to me, right? That's something I have to remind myself of every day. I don't struggle with binge eating nearly as much anymore, but I have days where I overeat. I have days where I'm not proud of what I did. And I'm the kind of person that if I let that stay up here, then it's going to continue to rule over me and cycle over. And
Yep.
No,
Hey, yeah, go ahead.
that's a that's a great way to look at it because I mean, for example, for me, I've now started posting a lot more talking videos, and I quit doing that a long time ago because I was afraid that I was cringe or embarrassing. But at the end of the day, I really needed those videos of myself talking more than anybody else. Like now
Hmm.
I go back there and just watch I've watched our other podcasts like twice or three times just because like you kind of start hearing some stuff that you didn't catch the first time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I have a great example. Last night I had my company Christmas party, and I definitely went over on my carbs. Like I saved 600 calories because I knew I would, eat some food there, but I probably ate an extra like 1,500. You know what I mean? So I went like 1,000 calories over. But today, guess what? I just did exactly what I was going to do, except I'm on prep, so I have to be a little more careful. I can't just be like, just get back on track. It's a little bit more strict for me. So I had to decrease my carbs today by like 100 grams, which isn't that much, by the way, guys. It's really not. I could eat 1,000 grams in a day if I wanted. So 100 grams of carbs is not that much. And then I just went on an extra run today, like 30 minutes. That's it. And tomorrow I'm just gonna get right back on track. That the scale's not gonna move. Like everything's gonna be fine. So, but my past self would have easily did like 2 hours on the stairmaster, high volume lift, try to destroy my body in the gym, and then that would make me really hungry, and then I would go binge again, and then it just creates a cycle. So, anyways, to wrap this topic up, Isaac's whole point here is just, hey, look, if you binged last night, if you overate last night, no, you didn't. And it's not saying like, no, you didn't. Obviously, you did. But he's saying tomorrow, just get right back on track and don't change what you were going to do in the first place. Just
Yeah, 100%.
I think I'll just kind of end it with this kind of like I guess we'll go back to the whole natural versus unnatural. I'm not even gonna say that because like I don't care how you lose weight. I don't care if you take the medicine. I don't care if you had surgery. I don't care if you did it naturally. At the end of the day, like I was saying, we can all coexist and just say, hey, I'm proud of you for losing the weight. I'm proud of you for reaching your goals. I'm proud of you for doing this and that. At the end of the day, we don't have to know how you did it. All we have to do is really be proud of you for doing it.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy.
I don't think so. I don't. We don't want to spoil anything for next week.
Yeah, 100%.
Get your money up. That's all I'm saying. If you're gonna. Okay, so a lot of people, I will talk about my pricing. So a lot of people really, it's a very large upfront cost. So I'm just gonna use me as an example. I'll go ahead and say I paid about $600 for mine, but it was almost for a year's worth of Reddit True Tide. And when I broke, first off, I'm a finance major, so I do math. And when I broke it down, it's about $30 a month. I spend more going out and eating out than for like $30. So I'm just giving up a meal like for a month.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you can't buy your health. I talked about that today. You can't buy your health.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Really, one big piece of advice: if you're not 18, don't think about doing peptides.
I'm gonna leave you with this. If you don't know where to get it, you shouldn't be on it. Drop a hot dog. I want to see a hot dog in the comment section.
Out.
All right, hold up, hold up.